Hi, I'm Maris. I white-knuckled a steering wheel for 9 hours with a 3-tier cake sweating in my lap and hope sitting heavy in my chest, all to crash a storm that shouldn't have needed me to knock. A blizzard roared across the interstate like it had something personal against me. I kept going anyway, because my little sister Lila was getting engaged. And once upon a time she swore strawberry champagne cake could fix anything. I paid extra to have it baked at dawn, wrapped it like a newborn, and told myself the same lullaby on repeat. This is worth it. She's worth it. Comment if you've ever been treated like a stranger in your own family. The kind whose name sounds foreign in their mouths. And if you're here for the next chapter, hit subscribe. Snowstorms are straightforward. Family is weather with an agenda. By the time the skyline shrank to a paper silhouette in my rearview, my coat had turned into a damp curtain and my heels were dangling from my finger like a dare. I stopped once, gas station coffee, bathroom mirror pep talk, change into those heels on a tile floor that smelled like pine cleaner and regret, and drove the rest of the way on faith and caffeine. Hawthorne Ridge Estate rose from the snow like a bridal hallucination. Powdered lawns, iron gates strung with gold lights, a string quartet's polite joy leaking through double doors. My tires chewed fresh gravel. This is going to be unforgettable, I thought, and the universe, petty little thing, whispered back, just not the way you think. The valet blinked at the silver bakery box in my arms. Are you catering? I laughed, soft and civilized. No. I'm family. Inside, the air was thick with rose and vanilla, but the cold clung to my spine like a superstition. Women in petal-colored gowns tilted their faces toward me and away again, ducking their eyes like I was a draft. I shifted the weight of the box and kept walking. If a cake could be a peace offering, I was holding a white flag with buttercream borders. And then Lila. Silk blush dress, curls sprayed into submission, laughing at something a groomsman breathed into her ear. The second she saw me, her smile snapped off like a light on a timer. You actually came? She said, and the question grazed like a paper cut. I drove all day, I answered, lifting the box as if it could prove intention. Surprise. I didn't think you'd, make it in this weather. Her hand stayed fastidiously empty. I set the cake on a sideboard beside a parade of miniature macarons, their pastel shells grinning like teeth. You're getting engaged. I wouldn't miss it. Behind her, one of the bridesmaids, Sloane, the permanent whisper, leaned in loud enough to register on a seismograph. She wasn't on the list, was she? I told myself not to flinch, even as I watched Lila's face shift from surprise to arithmetic. She smoothed her dress. I'll be right back, she murmured, and vanished into a side hall that smelled like eucalyptus and strategy. I floated through that ballroom like rented decor. My mother, Evelyn in pearls and navy, spine ironed straight, offered an air kiss so delicate it could have been mime. Just don't make this about you, all right? She said, smiling as if the sentence were wrapped in satin. Tonight is for Lila. Of course, I replied, the word tasting like null. She glanced at the wet hem of my coat and frowned as if water were a moral failure. Adrian, Lila's fiancé, passed by with a nod so shallow it drowned in the carpet. Name cards winked from every table like a town registry. I scanned once, twice, 3 times, no Maris, not even a typo to prove I existed. An empty chair near the dessert station flashed a small lifeline. I stepped toward it, and a server slid neatly into my path, practice smile pinned on. I'm so sorry. That seat's for the DJ's assistant. Of course, I said again, that Swiss Army word for 100 kinds of hurt. I drank water from a plastic cup like it might rinse humiliation out of my mouth. On a projection screen, Lila's life flickered: birthday candles, a dance trophy, prom dates, 100 glossy reasons to clap. I scanned for myself as if I'd misfiled me. Nothing. Whoever curated this reel edited me the way you crop a stranger out of a vacation photo. Someone jostled my elbow and kept walking. Even the walls had better boundaries here. Aunt Helena materialized, perfume that could stun a small horse, dressed 2 sizes to the left. She patted my arm like a nurse prepping a shot. Try to be happy for your sister, she said, voice dipped in condescension. This is her big moment. Of course, I said, and oh how empty a full sentence can be. I found the coat room, a quiet chapel where coats hung like abandoned skins. On an ornate tray, 10 little boxes sat like bridesmaids at attention. Sparkling jewelry, handwritten notes tied with champagne ribbon. My name did not glitter anywhere. I sat on the bench, exhaling until my breath fogged my phone screen. The device buzzed. A new group chat blinked to life, titled Lila's Bridal Party Cherry Blossom. Either an accident or an omen that finally decided I deserved the truth. I scrolled to a message stamped earlier that morning from a contact labeled simply, Lila. She doesn't fit the look. We'll say the list was full. My throat went desert. The blue-lit words tunneled through my ribs. I deleted nothing. The screen went dark, but the sentences stayed carved on the insides of my eyelids. I stepped out into the cold and let the night slap me awake. The air bit medicinal. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was choreography. I walked back slower, counting breaths, counting steps, counting the ways you can make a person feel like furniture. The music had swelled, celebration curated to a fault. I drifted the ballroom perimeter like a ghost who knew better than to rattle chains. Aunt Helena disappeared. Mom laughed at a joke that wasn't funny. Lila sparkled. I was a skid mark on a white carpet no one wanted to acknowledge. I took the corridor toward the restrooms and turned wrong on purpose, looking for something no one had branded. The service hallway was narrow, a rib cage of rolling carts and heat lamps. Laughter, familiar and unkind, bounced off the tile like rubber bullets. I froze. Shadows jittered on the linoleum, one with curls and a champagne flute, one perched on a stool, ankles crossed like a smirk. Lila. Sloane. I can't believe she actually drove here. Sloane sing-songed, cruelty already fizzy in her voice. 9 hours through a blizzard for what? Lila said, fresh as a slap. A pity cupcake? A snort. She's always desperate for attention. Honestly. Lila's tone sharpened. The blade found me clean. I could have used the silence. And the sympathy. Their laugh ricocheted down the hall. If sound could bruise, I'd wear that echo for months. I backed away as if eye contact with a doorframe might expose me. A wrong turn took me right. I locked myself in a restroom stall and cried like a faucet that someone refused to fix. No soundtrack, no sobbing, just water finding exits. When the tears ran out, I wiped my face with my sleeve and met myself in the mirror. Red-rimmed, jaw set, a woman built of hurt and weather reports. I walked back through the kitchen, pretending I belonged. The cake sat exactly where I'd left it, pristine and untouched. A white lie with sugared violets. The fondant banner read, "To love, to laughter, to forever." It looked like a joke that forgot to be funny. A server started toward me. "Ma'am, guests aren't." "I'm leaving," I said, and it felt like a fact finally allowed to breathe. I lifted the service exit handle, stepped into the night, and let the wind sandblast what was left of my politeness. At my car, the phone lit up. Missed calls, texts with my name spelled correctly for the first time in years. I powered the thing down and put it face down, which is how I should have lived around these people all along. I didn't drive home. Not yet. I found a roadside motel with a vacancy sign that buzzed like a tired bee and paid in cash. The room's floral wallpaper looked like it had opinions. The comforter scratched like bad intentions. I sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, coat draped over the chair, the ghost of buttercream in the fabric. The TV glowed blue and silent. I played the hallway in my head on loop. 9 hours for what? What if she'd crashed? I could have used the silence. I whispered to the ceiling. What am I even doing here? The air conditioner coughed. Outside, snow fretted against the window. A soft percussion that made me think of applause from people who never clapped for me. Morning arrived rude and fluorescent through thin curtains. My phone pulsed with concern-shaped daggers. I braced and opened it. You embarrassed Lila. Why would you leave the cake and disappear? You always have a flair for drama. A cousin I hadn't heard from since the last election chimed in. You make everything about you. It was her night. And then the one that forced bile up my throat. My mother in the family chat. The narrative settled like wet cement. She's been emotionally unstable lately. Give her space. Not are you okay? Not did you make it home? Just tidying up the story so it matched the plates. By mid-morning, Lila posted a photo, white fur shawls, champagne tower. A ring laughed into the lens. Caption. A perfect night with all the people I love. Hashtag blessed, hashtag engaged life. I was not tagged. I wasn't even negative space. An old friend messaged. Weren't you supposed to be there? Lila said you couldn't make it. Everything okay? I didn't reply. But I opened a folder on my desktop titled Truth like I was filing evidence for a trial. The snow-fogged windshield, the cake receipt, the video of the untouched box taken through a kitchen window, screenshots of the bridal chat I wasn't supposed to read. I stared until my eyes went hot. Before I left town, I drove back past Hawthorne Ridge. The staff had shoveled away the drama. Lights twinkled like nothing ever happens in pretty places. Through a side window I could still see it, the cake immaculate and unwanted. I snapped a photo through the glass. Not for revenge. For proof. Someday when someone asked was it really that bad, I wanted to be able to say yes. Here's what you didn't see. Back in the car I checked voicemail. 14 missed calls. One message from Lila, soft with staged contrition. We need to talk but not in front of people. You took things too personally. I didn't delete it. I let it sit like leftover food on a counter, cooling into something inedible. Silence followed me home like a well-trained dog. I didn't plan to pick up when Lila finally rang, but I was done letting their versions calcify. When her face filled my screen, mascara intact, curls still obedient, I propped the phone against the sugar canister and said nothing. You picked the weirdest time to ghost, she started, bright and brittle. People are asking questions. I kept my face still. You always overreact, Maris. You take things too personally. This weekend wasn't about you. I let her talk until the words got bored of hearing themselves. I drove through a blizzard, I said, voice low and even. I brought a cake I ordered at dawn. I walked into a room where my name didn't exist. No seat, no photo, no hello. And I heard you laugh about how convenient my silence would be if I hadn't survived the drive. That's not fair. What's not fair, I said, is being edited out of your own family in real time. She launched into the script. Nervous jokes out of context, Sloane being funny. I watched her mouth move and then, with a thumb as steady as a verdict, I muted her for 30 seconds. She kept going, hands fluttering, eyes frantic. A puppet whose strings were approval and narrative control. When she finally noticed I wasn't reacting, I unmuted long enough to say, I'm done explaining myself, and tapped end. No slam. No theatrics. Just an exit. I opened my email and attached the bakery invoice. Subject. Receipt. Cake for Lila's engagement. Body. Attached is the receipt for the cake I paid for, the one that wasn't served. Recipients. Evelyn. Lila. Aunt Helena. Mom's reply was a 4-word heirloom. This isn't helping, Maris. Helping what, your storyline? 10 minutes later, a new message pinged from her. Subject. Enough. No hello, no kindness, just a screenshot from a private thread titled, Family Core Planning Only. Lila, she's not well. She'll twist this. Just wait, she'll spin it into a sob story. Evelyn responded with a thumbs up. Sloane chimed in, we tried to include her. She makes everything dramatic. It wasn't just betrayal. It was rehearsal. At noon a coworker slacked me. Heads up, someone vague posted about a meltdown sister on IG. Is that you? My stomach did that slow elevator drop. Lila's profile glowed saccharine. A pastel-filtered laugh, a ring front and center. Caption. Sometimes jealousy wears a familiar face but real love shines through. Not a tag. Not a mention. But the wedding gossip page had already scooped it up with a source story about an uninvited relative causing a scene. I didn't scream. I didn't type an essay. I opened the folder on my desktop labeled Truth and posted 3 images to my own feed. The untouched cake through the kitchen window, my windshield glazed in storm, a selfie outside the venue, wet hair, raw cheeks, the silver box in my arms. Caption. Sometimes you drive 9 hours for people who wouldn't shovel your name off a sidewalk. Love teaches. So does weather. Comments off after 2 hours. Then I drafted an email to the PR inbox at Adrian's company. No editorial, no venom. Just a zipped PDF of screenshots and timestamps, including Lila's jealousy post and the core planning thread. If he wanted curated, he deserved to know the cost of the gloss. At dusk, a text arrived from Sloane of all people. Don't say you heard this from me, but Adrian postponed dinner with his parents. Said something came up. Consequences don't need captions. Saturday came dressed like forgiveness. Sunlight and a breeze pretending nothing had happened. Aunt Rowan, the only relative who had ever fought for me out loud, had already insisted I show up for her little brunch. Don't let them make you small, she'd said on the phone. Not on my watch. Her house hummed with syrup and subtext. People in cream sweaters, platters of melon, the kind of cutlery that clinks like disapproval. I took a seat near the window, the Switzerland of seating charts. Lila stood at the far end with a flute in hand, smile lacquered and campaign-ready. She tapped her glass and poured a sentence on the room like honey. This week reminded me how beautiful it is when family chooses love over ego. There it was, the velvet-wrapped jab. A few eyes slid toward me like magnets that didn't want to work. I set down my orange juice and stood, calm as a courtroom. Mind if I say something too? A hush fell so complete you could have heard a pearl drop. Lila blinked. My mother's hand tightened on her glass. Sloane's lips parted like a fish rediscovering air. I drove 9 hours in a blizzard, I said, voice steady. I brought a cake. I brought myself. And while I was thawing in your kitchen hallway, I heard you laugh about how peaceful things would be if I never showed up at all. That's not what, Lila started. I held up a hand, not to silence her, but to hold the floor I'd never been allowed to keep. I froze in that hall, I said. But my thumb didn't. I pulled out my phone and tapped a file in voice memos. Reflex is a funny bodyguard. The room filled with the sound of their laughter. Lila's voice crisp as a winter star. 9 hours for what? A pity cupcake. Then Sloane giggling mean. What if she crashed? Imagine the sympathy, and the silence. The recording ended like a door finally shutting. That's the context, I said softly. Adrian blinked like he'd been splashed. My mother stared into her drink, color gone. Aunt Helena fixed her gaze on a croissant, suddenly fascinated by pastry. No one moved to defend the indefensible. Lila's face went through 3 shades of panic before landing on anger. She stepped toward me, glass trembling. You don't get to twist this, she hissed. You twisted it, I answered louder now. When humiliation felt easier than honesty. You're trying to ruin my moment. You needed a villain so badly, I said. You forgot how expensive it is to manufacture one. The silence didn't feel heavy. It felt surgical. I didn't stay for brioche. I slid my phone into my pocket, thanked Aunt Rowan for the quiche I didn't taste, and walked toward the door. She followed, palm warm between my shoulder blades. You didn't just clear your name, honey, she whispered. You burned the whole script. I nodded, a small bow to the first kindness of the day. Outside, the air had that afterstorm brightness, the kind that makes even puddles look honest. Morning lit up my phone before it lit up the room. 3 notifications lined up like dominoes. The first was from Monica, the neighbor who taught me to ride a bike and mind my own business. Did you hear? Engagement dinner's off. His parents asked for a pause. Their word, not mine. I blinked at it, not because I wanted chaos, just because truth had finally found a microphone. The second was a status from Aunt Rowan, patron saint of spines. Truth stings at first, but it sets you free if you're ready. No names. No hashtags. Everyone knew. The third was a screenshot forwarded from a private family thread where I'm always the ghost. A photo of me at brunch, phone in hand, the caption unhinged, attention-seeking, typed with the dainty cruelty of people who fold napkins into swans. I didn't reply. The part of me that used to crave explanation had gone quiet the way a room goes quiet when the music finally ends. An hour later, Adrian texted. Not a pure-polished paragraph, not a life raft, just accountability that didn't ask for absolution. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that. I heard everything and didn't speak up. I regret it. I read it twice. Not for satisfaction. Just to remind my nervous system what it feels like when a sentence lands without a blade hidden inside. Sloane followed with a lone sentence that sounded like it cost her pride. I'm not proud of who I was that night. No emojis. No excuse. I let it sit. Sometimes silence is a boundary. Sometimes it's a receipt. That evening I opened a blank post and typed the words I'd needed at 19:22 and yesterday. Sometimes it takes a blizzard to see clearly. To the quiet ones who've been edited out of the photo, your edges aren't the problem. I saved it, didn't publish. My voice didn't need a stage. It needed a lock that only I had the key to. One word lit my screen before midnight. Please. Lila. I didn't answer. I let the message breathe and watched it fail to grow into an apology. A week passed before I called. When she picked up, her voice was small and human in a way I hadn't heard in years. You just left me, she whispered. You disappeared, Maris. That's how I felt since I was 9, I said. No venom, no tremor. Just weather. She didn't spin this time. I messed up, she said, words scraping out like they'd been stuck behind her teeth. I was cruel. I didn't want you there because I knew people would compare us again, and I hated the way that felt. You should have told me, I answered. I'd have still sent the cake. I just wouldn't have driven through a storm to deliver it myself. Silence then. I started therapy this week. Good, I said and meant it. That's the most honest thing I've heard from you in years. My fiancé hasn't called, she added, voice shaking. He says he needs time. Maybe he's learning what I did, I said. Silence can be louder than screaming. She cried, real unpretty crying. I didn't comfort her and I didn't hang up. Both were choices. When the quiet settled, I drew the line I should have drawn long ago. I don't hate you, I said. But I'm not going back to how it was. I'm done playing background. She exhaled like a confession. Okay. We stayed on the line for a few breaths, two people finally letting air do its job. Then we hung up, no slam, no cliffhanger. Just an end that respected itself. Later, I opened the draft I'd saved and hit post. To the quiet one at the table. You are not invisible. You don't need permission to speak. Sometimes your story begins where their script ends. Messages poured in, old classmates, coworkers, a cousin who once borrowed my coat and my patience. Some apologized. Some said thank you. I answered the ones that felt like futures, not repairs. The next morning I walked to the corner bakery where I'd placed the order that became proof. I bought another cake, simple white frosting, a whisper of gold dust, no names. Back home, I lit a single candle and sliced the first piece for myself. No toast. No tears. Just quiet that didn't hurt. Outside, the last of the snow had loosened its grip. Puddles held the sky like they finally believed it loved them back. Not every ending needs thunder. Sometimes it needs a door closing softly enough that you can hear the lock click. Snowstorms are easy. Family is the forecast you write yourself when everyone else keeps drawing clouds over your sun. If you've ever been told you're too much for existing, or had to walk away so your voice could stay, your seat is here, and your name card doesn't smudge. Share your story in the comments. And if you believe in stories that heal, that fight back, that matter, like, subscribe, turn on notifications. This chapter belongs to me. The next one might be yours.